We're live Friday, September the 15th, yes? 1943. Final days of the battle. Okay, is Brandon here?
Yes, sir.
Is Tyler here? Is Brian here? No. Is Olivia here? Aaron's here. Do you go by Aaron? What's your middle name?
Devon.
Frederick. I don't see Frederick, do you? I see Brian. Adrian. You go by Adrian?
Yeah.
Kendra.
Kendrick.
Kendra.
Yes, sir.
Do you go by Kendra?
Yes, sir.
No Dre's or Kens?
Yeah, you can call me King. Drake.
TJ. Frederick. Olivia. What's your middle name, Olivia?
Renee.
Nancy? No, it wasn't. It used to be. How's engineering going? Kendra, did you sort out your major yet?
Yes, sir. I'm just gonna do regular business.
Good choice. If you're interested in music business, business is a good thing to do. Because it's that or lawyer, and lawyer is another music business thing. Okay, today
Good.
I'd like to go over an analog, what do you call this thing, mixing board, and then kind of relate it to our Pro Tools mixing board. I'm not even going to plug it in or anything yet. We'll gather around and we shall see exactly what things will be. Okay, everybody's here but Tyler. Okay, we're going to go from top to bottom, left to right, and front to back. Okay? Now, in the top, this is called the trim. And this is like setting the gain on the interface. Where you want your amplitude is here. You don't use this to adjust the overall amplitude, whether you're recording or whether you're doing live sound. This is called a fader, okay? The reason it's called a fader is because you use it to fade. All right? That's what you do with it. You don't do this. See, you can get in, you can start doing all this and doing your main, and you got all these volumes versus level indicators going on. So you got to set everything you can to what's called U, which is like 0 dB. Okay? So if you set everything you're doing to one of those things, then you adjust your gain on your microphone coming in. Now if you got a line coming in, the line sender, the way that instrument or whatever it sends out, that's your line level. Okay? So this board has phantom power that would allow you to use a microphone on a number of these channels. Okay? This is you could put on way more stuff than we want to hear on this mixing board, I assure you. Many things. Okay, so now what happens from there? Well, let's skip this just for a second and get down to here. Now, mute button mutes. Okay, everybody understand that? Silence. Now the next thing is the pan. Now pan is to go to the left or the right. Does everybody understand that? And that we just set this one mono channel into space, left or right. Now what does that control? You have several adjustments here. You have solo. What solo does is just blocks everything else out on the board and does it. So you can check the levels just on it. Now the next thing it says 1 and 2. Well, 1 and 2 does is sends the left-right pan to this sub. Okay? Does that make sense? So this is there. It sends it equally to there. And we would probably pan this both ways, and then it's out the main mix. Okay? There's another way to deal with this, is just to hit the left and right. If it's left and right, it just goes to the main mix right to here. Okay? Now this is called, it's said to have 4 subs, meaning submixes. Now these things also can come out the back where it has, when we want to send this, we can send our mix to a number of places. Left and right main outs. That would be to your speakers or your amplifiers, or speakers I use are all amplified. And then there's another main inserts. We'll go over inserts in a minute. Then there's aux sends and returns and sub outs. So you can take stuff directly out of these subs to other places too. Now the other thing that you can do up here is we have 6 auxes. And that's an auxiliary send. So say I've got the saxophone coming in here. I've trimmed it. I'm going to put it into the main mix in the middle. So I'm sending it. And there's that. Now, okay, let's say the saxophone player or the piano player or somebody has a stage monitor sitting next to them in some way, and we can assign these 6 aux to, like aux 1 could go to the thing that's right by the saxophone player, go to the stage monitor, that's what it's called, right next to the saxophone player, and then among our stuff we can determine, or between the sax player and the sound engineer, what he needs to hear in his monitor. So what are the choices? Well, he might want to hear himself, he might want to hear drums and bass, or he might not need to hear the drums, but the piano or the other saxophones. So whatever else is coming in, and I assign to aux 1 and then master it through here. This is an aux master. So I could have a bunch of these ends going to aux 1, and then I would send them that much to them, and then they would have some adjustment on their actual speaker. We'll get the door for us because they didn't pay for this, just you guys. They don't need to like have dollar bills flying out the door to them. Okay, so that's pretty simple, right? Now, we could have these first four could be auxes to different parts of the stage. Does that make sense? All right. Or you could aux it in a big setup over to another mixer that's just doing the stage mix. Very important mix. Now, what people do on stage, depending on the venue and what they're trying to do, they could have wedge monitors. They could have a little monitor like we used for Ruby the other day. They could have in-ear monitors, wireless or wired. Just depends on the kind of music and what you have available. So the person doing the stage mix is responsible for what the musicians are hearing at a big venue. A lot of times, if you had a board like this, you would be doing all of that. And the easy thing is you have 6 aux sends. That's pretty many, really. Now the first 4, the first 2 are pre. Now what that means, so you might decide pre and post. What does that mean? Pre means pre-fader. So whatever comes in here, if it's on number 1, regardless of the fader, it's going to its destination. Does that make sense? Now, 3 and 4 are pre or post, but can be made pre by that button. Okay, so we have the potential of 4 pre-fader auxes. Did you understand all those words? Okay, take a button is often called a bus. So if I say, take the bus out, it's post fader. Now these bottom 2 are only post fader. So if this comes down, that comes down. So there's different scenarios why you would want pre or post fader stuff. Now auxes don't just have to go to monitors. They can go lots of places. All right, so the next thing down is the EQ. Okay? Now, down here we have a bus that has this symbol on it, which means high pass filter. And it has a 75 hertz, 18 dB roll off. So it's 75 hertz. If you press that down, it gradually rolls it off to 0, the amplitude. Now what does that do? A lot of instruments on stage aren't below 75 hertz. We talked about this the other day, right? So any other things happening, bouncing around on the stage or knocking or any kind of thump, or you can roll that off with the mic and with the mixer. Now you also have a 4-band EQ. EQ stands for equalization, and it has a -15 and a +15 Sept, meaning this first one, the low, is at 80, okay? So you can make that less or make that more. The next one is 100 to 8,000. And then you have these really high EQs, and you have 2 mid-range EQs. I'd have to kind of look this up to tell you the exact frequencies on that. But you can just push or pull back certain frequencies of the sound. And there may be a reason to do that for the hall. Now, if you wanted to set a big EQ for all of your hall and everything you do, you get a hall resonator which shoots a large blast of pink noise. And pink noise is all frequencies, but mainly more on the lower end. White noise is all frequencies. White noise is like, we used to give the example, between the stations on the TV, but we don't have that anymore. It's just pink noise is more, but it's all frequencies. It's a noise band, so it's full spectrum. So you go, and then that would record your ups and downs of frequencies of your hall, and then you would adjust your board to that. That's probably not happening right now, but that's in a big, fancy, expensive hall, that $50 million sort of thing. You're going to do all those things. Back when I was a mere boy of 35 or 40, or younger than that, 30-ish, I did consult for a lot of large venues, and we would do these kind of things. But mainly I would talk to them about the conduit that needs to be run from the stage to the recording booth and the live sound booth. A lot of things that we don't really have here, actually. I used to consult a lot about. Who cares? Right. All right. So we've got 28 mics coming in. Now the next thing I want to show to you right now is when you use a board, when you're done, you do what's called zeroing the board out. And it's really important. Like you see that? That's not zeroed. So I zero that out. The auxes are all zero. The EQs are right in the middle. That's right in the middle. And I think probably no buttons down would be the correct thing here. Okay, so that the next engineer that comes in always is looking at the same board and always sets it up to his or her liking. Now, new digital boards, which are really cool, you can save your settings and just bop through your various scenes, I think they would call it, and it's just everything, it just goes, and then, you know, all the faders and the thing is, you're only looking at like this many channels usually. That's going to represent like 32 channels. I'm a big analog person because I like to be able to follow the line of everything that I'm doing. One day I'll die and others can do digital things. Okay, so down here, this would all be. Now, there's other things here that are going on, a little more complicated. One more thing I want to do is look at yes, did stop in mid-sentence. Yes, I did. What we call an insert. Right, this is pretty old school, but new school enough that it's digital. It's a rack mount. These are called the ears on a rack mount situation, and they mount in a rack. Okay, so this is a dual channel processor. What it's basically is echo and reverb, that sort of thing. You got that? All right, now, this is the cool thing about a fancy mixer. They have what's called inserts, all right? The top thing is an insert. The next thing is a line in. Are we still going there?
Yeah.
I'm really better if I'm very small, aren't I? Okay, say these are what's called TRS plugs. I've described that before, tip ring sleeve. So they're sending different signals out the tip in the ring, and the sleeve. Okay, so what that can do is, depending on where you set your insert, if you plug it all the way in, then it can go to your input and your output of this. So let's say we just have this channel going in. This is, see, it's even labeled tip, and this is ring. So you put the output there. So when the signal comes in, it goes through here and back through the same channel. So you're mixing you're having a wet mix right at the start. Does that make sense? Now there's other ways to do this. You can, by adjusting this, like have it one click in, you can send it to here and then send the output to, you need other wires, send the output to another channel's input. And so pretend I sent this here to a line input here. This will be my dry, this will be my wet. So I have other control. Now, when you do it through the same channel, you have to rely on all of your mixing, dry to wet, and everything going on here. Does that make sense? Or you could get a really wet mix here and just have your real strong dry mix here and just determine how much you would bring in, and then that you might actually mix a little bit with the fader there. You might. Does that make any sense? This is called an insert. All right. So you can use these externals two different ways: as an insert or as a whole nother loop in the scenario there. That's kind of like what we do in Pro Tools, right? If we want to put reverb right on the channel, that's like doing an insert. If we want to send the channel out, the auxiliary to out a bus to an auxiliary input, then we mix wet and dry in two separate channels in Pro Tools too. We all kind of get that. All right, all mixers are like this. They're just bigger or smaller. Okay, now when you get into the digital realm, you have a layer of software on top of that. I used to use a digital mixer here that worked with Pro Tools, but DigiDesign made it initially, and then that was sold to somebody else, and then finally Avid bought it all up, and they no longer supported this expensive piece of hardware that I had been mixing on for 14 years, so, you know, you just have to move on. You do, sometimes. Anyway, any questions about the analog mixer? Now, the thing about the 4-bus system is you could get 4 channels of speakers, right? And if you kind of messed around with some auxiliaries and stuff, you could maybe get more than 4. Like the things that I deal with in my composition, we're doing electronic music in Space's design form. There may be 64 channels being mixed, or I often mix my stuff in like 8 channels with 2 subwoofers. And then you kind of need to place stuff in the space. Like, it's more complicated, and I usually get some help, honestly, I do. Any questions about the real mixer? They're heavy. Heavy. Yes.
Is that the one like MUS uses?
Until I took it back. You know.
Okay. Alright.
You could still use it. The deal I made with whoever had it was that if they did want to use it, I would show them how to do it correctly.
Okay.
And let them use it. I don't really need this very much, you know. I sometimes have to do a show that requires more auxes. I do have like an 8-channel mixer that also allows for 4 instrument inputs. That's kind of the limit of what we're doing in jazz band here. That's kind of. Could we do more? Yes. Could you tell the difference? Probably not. Even if we pull the fader down, you can't tell that much difference. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is go ahead and set up and take what we did with Olivia the other day and just put a few finishing touches on it. Maybe put a little reverb on it, or decide how we want to mix it into space. Just some easy things. Maybe experiment with some vocal compression, but not too many things so that we don't exceed our time. Okay. You can do what you want to do now. I am going to turn on the computer. Ooh. Dropped out of the band, right? Or decided no longer to serve?
The marching band, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Brandon? No. Still marching.
Still doing it.
Olivia, never. Or do you
Never.
work for the band?
No, I do not.
Sometimes we have, a lot of times we do have singers working for the band.
No.
Any kind of marginally reliable person come help, please help us. Well, after using the Thunderbolt fancy drive, I'm more impressed with our Focusrite USB drive. I think it's very good too. Why were y'all in the recital all day? The band.
They got a concert coming up.
Are you not in that? We're not so.
We have a concert coming up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's exciting. Okay, I'm about to click on recent here because we did this recently, as you recall. The difference being when the next person clicks on it, it's not going to say template. It's going to say recent. We have to switch back. See that? We're going to do Olivia Sings. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is Alt-click no. I'm going to hide and make inactive the first track because we're not going to use it. Okay? Then, when I click on this with my Option key down, I can change them all the same way. I'm also going to Control-click and hide and make inactive my instrument that was the metronome, right? So now I've just got the 3 tracks that I'm going to work with looking good. Now I can click on the master track without making it inactive. I can just click away from it. What I'm going to do is Command equal to get the mixer to come up, and I'm going to click on that, and so we get that there. I think it was already there. I like to have my master fader showing my peaks and whatnot because I don't need to look at the master track. There's nothing going on there until I fade it down to 0 at the end of the tune. Okay? Now later the other thing I want to do is turn this to grid and click around here. What grid does is it makes it stay on the grid line there. Now I'm going to highlight. That's not what I wanted. I'm going to hit Control E. That didn't do it. Command E. There we go. You see how I made a split on all of that? Then I can just take my hand and click on them with the Shift key and delete them all. And bring all of these without changing. Now it looks like these got very small there. This right here will allow us to see that larger. It doesn't change anything. We can just see it larger. So let's just listen and then decide what we should probably do next.
I wanna go home where the heart is. I wanna feel safe in your arms again. I wanna go back to the love I left. I wanna go home.
I felt like the second part should get normalized. I think we had the levels the same, but just her range down there just wasn't as powerful. So we'll just pull this back and look at the whole thing and then select that. Then I click Audio Suite, Other, Normalize, and then I'll just do it at 100%. That's looking a little large. I'm going to undo that and do it to -3 dB. That's still a lot larger. Now we'll just listen again.
Where the heart is,
Definitely hear it
I
better.
wanna feel safe in your arms again. I wanna go back to the love I left. I wanna go home.
Okay, so we have maybe not our perfect balance, but we have a better balance. What might be fun is to distribute across the sound field a little bit. So basically this, or somewhere in between. Which voice should be in the center?
The one that starts.
The very first one. Okay, so we don't have to do anything to that. Now I'm going to go, since we're doing the whole thing, I can use my knobs to adjust it. Otherwise, I could use the lines within the edit track. So the first one is already in the center. So the second one is low. Let's just arbitrarily put it to one side. And I'm going to pan it out. All the way would be 100. I'm going to pan it to 50 to the left, or 51. And I'll do 50 or 51 to the right. Okay, so you saw what I did, right? Okay, great.
I wanna go home where the heart is. I wanna feel safe in your arms again. I wanna go back to the love I left. I wanna go home.
You may not can hear it as much if you're not in the center of the sound field, but it worked for me. Next thing. Okay, what have we done? We've adjusted our levels, not very craftily or anything, but just what we did. We've set the pan, and we're not changing the pan, so we're done with that. What would be next?
Compression. Or reverb.
I think reverb, I do. Now what I think, this is what I would do. I would click on a send and go to my bus and go to my reverb bus. Now I'm going to bring this up to 0. So it's going to be zeroed out. I can also type in a 0 there and hit enter. Now, so I've got that reverb where I want it. So I hit the option button, drag it, and it should replicate that over both of them. Now I need to add a new stereo aux input, and in this aux input, where it says no input, I need to change that to the reverb stereo bus to come in there. Alright? Now we'll show our master fader again there. Now, we have to put some reverb as an insert into that aux send. And we want it to be 100% because we're mixing dry and wet separate. And we'll probably pull that down. Now I'll just make that default concert hall. Now let's just take a listen, see what we got straight out of the box, see if we clip anything like that.
I wanna go home where the heart.
Immediately clipped everything out. I'm gonna turn the aux down. That seemed like too much reverb, didn't it?
I wanna go home where the heart is. I wanna feel safe in your arms again. I wanna go back to the love I left. I wanna go home.
I think I adjust that lower voice down a little bit. It's peaking me a bit. Who's peaking?
I wanna go home where the heart is. I wanna feel safe in your arms again. I wanna go back to the love I left. I wanna go home.
Okay, let's pretend that was our mix, all right? Now, what I'm gonna do is, we don't need these right now. I'm gonna go to my master and determine where I want everything to stop. Okay, it started getting a little noisy pretty right after. It could be a little longer. I'm going to fade them all out. Now, I've clicked on my volume, and I just click and drag using the finger. Now, just in case there's any noise at the beginning of our thing, I'm going to just fade this up really. And then, oh, that's the aux. I was fading the wrong thing, I apologize. I should have been fading the master. That works way better. All right, so now I'm taking the selection tool and just sliding it from my final fade out back to the beginning. I go to File, Bounce to, Disc. Now, I'm gonna click Import After Bounce, and I'll show you why, okay? And we'll just bounce that, and it's gonna put it in our bounced folder as a WAV file at 24-bit, and I'm going to leave it at 24-bit for now because we're not going to CD yet. So I bounce it, and I'm bringing it in as a new track. Now, what I want to do is mute everything but this imported track. Okay? So this is the bounced back track of what we were just working on.
I wanna go home where the heart is. I wanna feel safe.
Seems like I faded up on our
arms again. I wanna go back to the love I left. I wanna go home.
Now, this is where I compress. The bounced file is the compression file. So I'm going to click on that and then go up and try to go and find something that I feel like I want to use. And I might have to practice this a bit, but I'm going to start with Maxim. And I'm going to use the mixing limiter and render that. That's a preset. So I'm going to render that. And did you see it change? Did you? Okay, watch again. I'm undoing it. Okay, I'm rendering this. Watch the file. Well, I'll make it so you can. I'll make you see it. Okay, you see it? Rendering. Boom! Now look, that's not clipped. That's saturated. May or may not be what we want, but let's give it a try.
I wanna go home where the heart is. I wanna feel safe in your arms again. I wanna go back to